As an example, in London, the pill sells for $10. In New York, it sells for $130. That's 13 times as much. Most favored is, I want to pay what the lowest nation in the world is paying. Everybody knew about it, but nobody had the guts or the stamina to do it, or the respect from other nations, but I do. And then you also had to get the drug companies. The drug companies were not easy, but they were much easier compared to the other nations. So the other nations used to tell the drug companies, we're not going to pay more. You kept it for years the same price. Everything, we just kept going up, up, up. And finally I had the drug companies, and I said, listen, fellas, you can't do this. Can't do it anymore. I'm not going to let it. We're going to do it, and you're not going to do it. And I did things to them that were brutal, but I really found out it was the nations that were so tough. So when France was told that the pill will go from $10 to $30, it's a big increase, right? But it's not really. And that ours would come down from $12 or $13 down to $30. So theirs would go from 10 to 20 or 30, and ours would go from $13 down to, meaning $130, down to 20 or 30. So it's a huge drop for us. Now, depending on the way you calculate it, it could be thousands of percent down. It could also be 90% and 80%. You know, there's two ways of calculating. I don't know if you know. They said Donald Trump exaggerated. No, there are two ways of calculating it. But calculate it at 80, 90%. But the other way is more accurate, like 900%, because that's what it really is. But there are two ways, but use, to be generous, 90%. There hasn't been a reduction in 28 years, except for the 1 year where I got it down 1/4%, and I had a news conference. I was so proud of myself. The drug prices, prescription drugs, are going to be down by thousands of points, thousands. On that one item, you should win this election. The New York Times barely wrote about it. The other papers barely wrote about it. Nobody even knows that the drug prices. Now, people will say, you don't mind if I don't read this crazy teleprompter, do you? Because, do you mind? Because I have, it's called standard. But these things are so important because you guys got to get elected. Because if you don't get elected, we have a country that's going to go to hell. So we can't play games. Ladies and gentlemen, the sun will rise tomorrow, and when it rises, we don't need this bullshit. We need to talk about favored nations. And your numbers are coming down at levels that nobody's ever seen. We inherited high prices. We inherited a mess. We inherited the greatest inflation in history. And you know what was knocking it down? The bad economy that we inherited. We inherited bad. We now have the hottest economy in the history of our country. We have $18 trillion being invested in the United States. You have, every one of you have car plants, AI plants, plants of all different types. Because of tariffs. I hope we get the good ruling from the Supreme Court. I only hope we do, because it's given us tremendous national security. So let me just finish up, because I weave. I love to weave. If you ever weave and don't come back to the point, then that's a problem. Then you say, but when you weave and you go here and boom, 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 always coming back, then you're in good shape. But what's happening is, by doing what I did, we're getting numbers that are so low. But what did I do to the countries? I said, France, your health care for prescription drugs is going to go up triple. It's going from $10 a pill, just as an example. I called it the fat drug. You could say the fat drug, Ozempic. Ozempic is $80 in London, and it's $1,300 in New York. The fat drug. A friend of mine called me up. He said, what the hell is going on? A very rich guy, but I said, the fat drug doesn't work on you. Why are you even taking it? The drug has failed miserably, but he's a very loud, boisterous. He's not a bad guy, not a great guy. Smart as hell. But he's a very rich guy. This drug, he could have paid millions for it. It wouldn't have mattered.
you.